Dan called me on his way to work and said he would stop by the house. And I said, I know you have to go to work and I know you're busy, so it's okay. He's like, no, I'll stop by. And he walked into the house and he looked at me. He goes, yeah, I took the day off. I'm driving you to work. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what do you mean? And so I moved everything from my car to his, and we drove to Kingston. And I really don't remember the drive. I know there was a lot of crying. I know there was a lot of hand-holding. I know there was a lot of remembering. Dan came up to my mom's apartment with me. He stayed long enough to meet everybody and to give his condolences, and then he got back on the road to head home. And as he left, I remember trying to fight back the tears. My dad was never going to meet him, was never going to see who he was and what he did to support me and how happy he made me. Hi, and welcome back to 50s Unscripted. My name is Shelley, and I am so excited that you've joined us today as I embrace my second act and share my lived experiences, my tales from the trenches as I have navigated life over these many years. For those of you who are new, welcome. For those of you returning, thank you for being a regular viewer. And the goal here is just, like I said, just to share those lived experiences, offer a sense of community, and hopefully let people know that we aren't alone. Before we get started, I am a 52-year-old mom of 3 amazing young women. I am separated and now engaged to an amazing partner, and excited to be part of his family with his 2 sons. And I am the eldest of 3 daughters. My mom lives in Kingston. And today I want to talk about a rather difficult subject for me, and difficult for a lot of people. My dad, may he rest in peace, passed away May 10th, 2021. And so today I want to talk about what it was like losing a loved one. So if you are dealing with loss, if you are struggling, please do make sure to talk to a therapist, talk to your doctor, talk to family, and get the help that you need. These are just my experiences. These are my memories. And a lot of time you're going to hear me say, I don't fully remember. I know I did stuff, but I don't fully remember because there were a lot of emotions at that time. So what I went through will be different than if you were to talk to my sisters, if you were to talk to my mom, anybody else. We all experience grief differently, and we all experience the situation. So just embrace your memories and enjoy, sit back and watch as I share my journey. As a child, I remember how emotional it felt when I lost my grandparents. That was my first experience with death. And I was quite upset, and it was very hard, and I was very sad. But as much as I miss them and I think about them regularly, I didn't find it was as sad as it has been after losing my dad. I'm still sad. I miss them. I'm not trying to minimize that, but I found I was able to readjust faster. And in no way did it prepare me for what I would feel like when I lost my father. My dad had a number of health issues. I do remember this as I was growing up and whatnot. And he did undergo double bypass surgery when he was 47. And that was probably the first time that it actually, I know we all get old and we pass on, but it was at that moment that I realized my parents weren't going to be around forever. And suddenly that first time I felt fear and anxiety at the fact that I could lose a parent. He had his surgery, it went well, and he was doing much better, and life went back to normal, and I just kind of pushed the thoughts away, and I didn't think much of it. In 2003, he had surgery on his back for the first time, and, it was a difficult enough surgery, and there was some thoughts about it, but it was kind of concerned, but, he was strong, and I was pretty optimistic. But then in 2010, it was no, you don't have a choice. You have to have the surgery, because if you don't and you have an accident, you probably won't make it through. So we had to go in for another back surgery. And it was much more complicated. It was longer, and it was very scary. We did a lot of things, and it felt like we were saying goodbye before he went in, even though we were, optimistic he would come out okay. And while he did come out of the surgery, everything changed. The surgery was not a full success. he actually became a paraplegic from that. So he was wheelchair bound. And when he first came through, he could barely speak. So it was very frightening. It was very scary, and there was a lot to take in. This was a man who, growing up with, he would ride horseback, and he would go out and help the neighbors on their farm, and he played the accordion, and he mowed the lawn, rode the lawnmower around our backyard and stuff. He took me fishing. We went and did all this stuff, and he drove everywhere, and he was so independent. It was overwhelming. And that was just from my perspective. And I cannot even begin to imagine what him and my mom went through. I mean, I could see it, but I can't imagine how it felt like for him to lose that level of freedom. And the change that it had on him and my mom, because this changed all their retirement plans. He went from independence to relying solely on my mom to take care of him. And they had to downsize their house, and they had to get rid of a lot of things, because when you downsize, you can't keep everything that you've had in these houses for years and years. So they had to readjust to their dreams changing, their way of life changing. And it was a struggle, and we did see them struggle with that, and we helped them as best we could. As a family, we had to adjust. We helped them move. We helped them unpack. We helped them get rid of things that they no longer could keep. He was supported by PSWs and respite care because my mom needed self-care. My mom needed time. She was now responsible for everything. She had to do household chores. She had to deal with banks and doctor's appointments, and she needed her downtime. She needed personal time as well. So fortunately, there's a great system, and she was able to get a certain amount of time where he would go into respite care, and she could actually go see my other sisters or go visit her family and do things that she needed as well. I remember one time after my separation, because when he did go into respite care, the girls and I would drive to Kingston and go visit. And this was one time after the separation. And as much as we were doing it to help him, to keep him, he was always my dad. And he sat there. I actually think it was just me that time. I don't think the girls came with me. How are you doing? How are the girls coping? How are you getting through? Is there any chance of reconciliation? So even with everything he was dealing with, he was still there for each and every one of us. And he still wanted to help us and, make sure we were getting what we needed, and to know that we were loved, and that he wanted what was best for us, and he wanted us to be happy. And then unfortunately, COVID hit. So, as I've shared previously, my own health is not the best. I have an autoimmune disease, so it's very difficult, and I struggled staying healthy. In fact, I had COVID more than once. I had paramedics at my house to check my breathing one time. It was just not a fun time. And I was absolutely terrified of giving it to him. So we did what we could. We talked on the phone. And we did try to FaceTime, but my parents weren't always the best with technology. Sorry, Mom, it's true. And so even though we had the stuff set up, it just wasn't always the easiest to organize. So a lot of times it was just talking on the phone to see how they were doing. And during the summer of 2020, we were able to actually go see them. So during the summer, there was a little bit of a let up. So we made plans because it was my parents' 50th wedding anniversary. Kudos to them. What a milestone. And so we went to Lake Ontario Park in Kingston for a picnic. So the girls and I, we got some balloons, we got gifts, we got food, and off we went to join them at the park. So we got to do hugs, we got to laugh and spend time together and see them smile and everything. And so now, keeping in mind, so I think the last time I'd seen him was probably around, trying to think when COVID and everything went on. So we would have seen him just before COVID hit, and then, there's COVID. And I remember looking at him thinking, gosh, he's lost a lot of weight. He looks really frail. And I asked a couple questions. I'm like, hey, how are you doing? Everything going okay? And then I talked with my mom. I said, is everything okay? He looks like he's lost some weight. Well, it's hard, and he's not as hungry as he used to be. And, he eats and stuff, but he just doesn't eat as much. And okay, all right. So everything's fine. So, all fears put aside. But he seemed happy and whatnot. So we did that. And then I went back to see them a month later, almost to the day, a little bit more, because their anniversary was at the beginning of the month. And then my mom's birthday is a little bit into September, right at the start of September. So my sister and her husband and one of her sons and myself all went to join them to celebrate my mom's 70th birthday, another great milestone. And I remember when I saw him again, I'm like, gosh, he seems even like he looks like he's lost more weight. And so I was starting to get a little worried. But again, he was happy. He was laughing. I could see him eating all the food and stuff. And we were having a great old time. And then COVID hit again. So we didn't get to go see him at Christmas because, again, I just couldn't risk. I didn't want to make them sick. And I, it was just too scary from my perspective. That was my choice. And I felt it was the best for all of us. But April 2021 was his 50th birthday. So, or 70th, what am I saying, 50th? 70th birthday. So we got friends and family to send videos wishing him a happy birthday. And we put it all together and set up like a little montage kind of thing with pictures and stuff. And I set up a video conference with my family. So my sisters, my nephews, my nieces, my kids, because they were at their dad's that day. And even Dan, because we'd been seeing each other now for some time, joined in on that one. We got together and we did the call, and it was a little complicated. It was a Zoom call and we were having issues getting them on the phone. So my sister was helping my mom and him. And I remember looking at the screen thinking, oh my gosh, he's lost even more weight. And I suddenly got very scared. So we went through, we had a great time. We all talked, we laughed, we showed the video. He thought it was great. And then I started texting afterwards with my sisters and my mom and what's going on and asking questions. And no, nothing, but he is going in for some tests in a couple of weeks and we'll see what comes of that. So we waited for those tests. Unfortunately, 5 days later, when he did go in for those tests, he ended up being admitted to the hospital. They couldn't perform the procedure as he would not have survived it, they said. There was too much going on. So they had to run a bunch of tests to see what was going on. They were worried, did he have COVID? Did he have something else? Turned out he had pneumonia. So right away, I made arrangements for the girls to go stay at their dad's. I packed up my stuff. I packed up my work stuff. I packed up my dog, and off I went to Kingston to help my mom out. It was a tough time because at the time only one person could go into the hospital because, again, strict COVID regulations. And then in conversation with the doctor, my dad made the decision and informed the doctor and informed my mom and therefore all of us that he did not want any extraordinary measures and he wanted a do not resuscitate. It was time to stop. And it was very hard. But at that point, we were now allowed 2 people. So at least my mom and I could both go in and see him. My heart broke when I walked in to see him for the first time. The man I knew, he was still there, but he wasn't. He was scared. He was suffering. It really hurt. There was new looks, fear and resignation that he just couldn't recover. And there was fear, not necessarily for himself. It was more about my mom. What's going to happen to my mom? And I think that was his biggest fear. While we were there and waiting, because family wouldn't be allowed in until he reached end of life, I was setting up calls so he could talk to he couldn't really talk, but the grandchildren all got a chance to talk to him. I did FaceTimes with my sisters so they could see him, they could talk to him. And that went on for a little while. And then we got the notification that he was going on end of life because they didn't think he would last much longer. I quickly got on the phone with my sister, who I think the one that was in Ontario, I think her car was already packed. I think she was on the road within 30 seconds of me talking to her. And I called my other sister in Nova Scotia so she could begin to make the necessary arrangements to fly down. I'd gone out for lunch, and as I was walking back in, I heard some people at the front desk saying, "I'm sorry, they just changed the guidelines. There is no interprovincial travel. I cannot let you in because you're not from Ontario." We then realized that the province had put a lockdown, and my sister from Nova Scotia and her family and one of my nephews who was out there would not be able to come. It also meant no one in my dad's family would be able to come as they were all in Quebec. It was hard. And I'm not even going to begin to imagine what it was like for those individuals. But it was hard knowing that we wouldn't be all together as a family at this last stage. My sister, who was in Ontario, did arrive. And so I had made the decision that I would go home for the weekend. I needed to take my dog home. Or actually, I don't think I had the dog anymore. I think the dog had already gone back. I needed to go home and prepare the kids. And and get myself organized, change of clothes and everything for what was about to come. It was only going to be 2 days, but I remember how agonizing it was to leave the hospital and sitting there holding his hand and talking to him and trying to reassure him and telling him, I've been talking to his family and I've been talking to this and I've been, and we've got mom and she's taken care of and you don't have to worry and, we're going to be okay. And just trying to reassure him and trying to stay strong so he doesn't see the emotion, because I didn't want to add to whatever he was feeling. It was hard to communicate. He could barely talk. And I just needed him to know how much I loved him. And it was hard to keep that composure as I said goodbye. I remember getting out of the hospital. I don't remember getting back to the parking lot across the street. I truly felt broken at that time. I had tears streaming down my face. I was wearing my sunglasses because it was rather bright outside. And when I got to the car, I didn't even bother to pay for my parking. I just went and sat in the car and I sobbed. I needed to just let everything out so I could drive home. I had to drive from Kingston to Toronto. So I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to go. I was worried about not being there. But I had to go and get ready and I had to go help my kids because as much as I'm grieving, I needed to help them prepare as well because I knew they were struggling with this. I was only going to be gone 2 days. I will be back on May 10th. I got home. I spent time with the kids. I talked with family, friends. I talked with my sisters and my mom regularly. I did my laundry. I spent some time with Dan, took the dog out for walks. And on Sunday night, I got everything ready so that as soon as the kids went to school the next morning, I could be on the road and gone. And I honestly was like, I think I can do it. I can make it. I'm going to get to see him. And then we got the call that it won't be long. They didn't expect him to make it through the night and we should prepare ourselves. So I wasn't sleeping very much, needless to say. So I kept myself busy. I knew I wanted to make my dad proud. So I started working on an obituary. I started working on prayer cards, things. I wanted to make sure that when I wrote them, I was coherent and I was thinking of everything and I was in the right headspace. I wanted him to know that I did it right. I think it was about 3 a.m. and I was laying in bed and I'm like, hey, I might actually make it back in time. No call. He's I talked to my sister. She just sent my mom home to get some rest because it looked like he was going to last a little bit longer. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to get to see him. I'm going to get to see him one more time. And I don't even remember falling asleep. I did doze briefly. And then I felt my phone buzz with one single text. He's at peace. I stared at that for what felt like an eternity and I sobbed. It was hard. It was very hard. It was very early in the morning. It was still before 4 o'clock. I did try and call Dan, but middle of the night and phones are all on sleep mode. So he didn't get the call, but I did leave him a message so he would know as soon as he woke up for work. I was trying very hard to stay as quiet as possible because I knew my girls were sleeping and I knew I couldn't call my dad's family. Obviously, they're all older and stuff. I didn't want to call them at 4 a.m. So I waited. I think it was around 5. I started making phone calls to my mom's family in Nova Scotia. And shortly thereafter, I started calling my dad's relatives. And it was while I was talking to one of my dad's relatives, my daughter heard me. My youngest came into the room, heard me talking and crying. And then she came in and we just sat there and consoled each other. I woke up one of the other girls and then I went and saw one of the other girls to tell her because she was at her dad's. So to fill her in on what had happened. I talked to her on the phone, I think. We didn't see each other at that time. Dan called me on his way to work and said he would stop by the house. And I said, I know you have to go to work and I know you're busy, so it's okay. He's like, no, I'll stop by. And he walked into the house and he looked at me. He goes, yeah, I took the day off. I'm driving you to work. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what do you mean? And so I moved everything from my car to his. We dropped the kids off at my ex's house so they could, or maybe we dropped them off at school. I can't quite remember, but we dropped some stuff off at their dad's house and we drove to Kingston. And I really don't remember the drive. I know there was a lot of crying. I know there was a lot of hand holding. I know there was a lot of remembering. And that was it. And we got there and Dan came up to my mom's apartment with me so he could use the restroom. He stayed long enough to meet everybody. So he met my mom and my sister for the first time and to give his condolences. And then he got back on the road to head home. And that was it. And as he left, I remember trying to fight back the tears, because it wasn't that he was leaving. I mean, as much as I would have loved for him to stay, it was more of my dad was never going to meet him, was never going to see who he was, and what he did to support me and how happy he made me. We did have to wait for the funeral home because they have to send the body from the hospital to the funeral home. So I spent the time, for coping, I was looking through pictures, and I was looking through the memorabilia and all the photos and taking, capturing some of them, making copies and stuff. My mom and my sister began the hard task of looking at what clothes he would need, what things they would have to get rid of. I couldn't help with that. I wasn't in the right headspace. So I focused on looking at the other stuff and making sure to kind of reread the prayer cards and the obituaries and make a list of all the people and try and find people that, we hadn't talked to. So I was searching on Facebook for people I knew so that we could make sure everybody heard. When we did go to the funeral home, it was very overwhelming, but at the same time peaceful. They were beyond empathetic and helpful. They were absolutely fabulous. We talked about what we wanted. And my dad had wanted to be cremated, so we discussed that. We discussed all the limits due to COVID, which meant we could only have 9 people attend the funeral. But we would have a virtual link. We talked about what music. They didn't have a minister, so he would refer us to somebody who could come and talk briefly. They asked the type and style and all that stuff. And then we had to go and view the body to confirm and say our goodbyes. So my youngest sister and I went in first, and it was hard because I just wanted my dad. and I didn't want him to be gone, right? Nobody wants your parents to be gone. But it was funny because I felt a mix of guilt and anger and shame, because it's like, what could I have done more of? What could I have done differently? Or, why am I so upset that he's gone? Look at how much pain he was in near the end and what we saw him going through. And look how peaceful and at rest he is now. He was not in pain, and there was no more fear, no more sadness. He was at rest. So we accepted that. And my mom then came in and got to say her goodbye. And then we FaceTimed with my sister from Nova Scotia so she could see him as well. As you can see, even 5 years later, it's still very hard to go through. Thank you. After we had done that, and we'd said our goodbyes, it was then choosing everything. And it was overwhelming at the selection. They had so many urns, and there were other things I'd never even thought of. You could have jewelry, and you could get, I can't even think of all the stuff. But the one thing we also could get is a heartstone. So my sisters and I each have a heartstone with a little bit of dad. So he's always with us, and it actually warms up as you're holding it. My kids have picked it up from time to time when they're having a rough day or when they miss him. I made the mistake of practicing my podcast in front of my youngest last night. I forgot she was sitting in the other room, and so she was using this last night after she went upstairs to just kind of be close to Papa. But it is nice having him close to us, and I do have a ring of his that I like to keep. It's a little bit big on me, but I do like to wear it so that he's close as well. The next couple of days were very busy with preparations. As I said, only 9 people were allowed in. So there was my mom, myself, my kids, my sister, her husband, and one of her kids. The family in Nova Scotia couldn't come. The family in Quebec couldn't come. We did also invite 2 of his friends, and we were able to invite 2. It is hard, and it is a lot. Only 2 of my kids were up to the travel, and there's nothing wrong with that. It was virtual. It was a lot. She just didn't want to be away from a parent, and I couldn't go back to pick up the girls because I didn't have a car. Dan had dropped me off. But Dan had graciously offered to take another day off work and bring the girls to me. So one daughter chose to stay with her dad, and the other 2 came to join me for the funeral. The morning of, we got up and we got ready, and we went to the funeral home. Dan gave us all a big hug, took the dog out for a walk, and because he couldn't come in, and we went in for the funeral. What made it even harder is we couldn't even sit together as a family because of COVID protocols. So we had to space out. So my two daughters and I were on one side, my sister, my mom, and her family were on the other. And then further back, spaced out throughout this huge room, were the two friends. We knew everybody was joining us virtually. I had shared it on Facebook with people. I had shared the link through emails and through calls. So we knew that everybody would be joining and watching. And my daughter texted that she could see us and that she was there with us. So she was watching along and messaging us throughout the ceremony. The music started, and as soon as the song started, it was Faith of Our Fathers, which is one of my dad's favorites, and the tears started and they didn't stop. We held each other tight. My brother-in-law delivered a beyond perfect eulogy for my dad. The minister was phenomenal. All he did was interview us and ask us questions, and you would have thought he'd known my dad his entire life. He did such an amazing job. It was over before we knew it. It was short and sweet. And then that was it. They gave us the urn. We all got to hug it and give Dad that goodbye. And we walked outside where Dan was waiting for us, and he gave us all hugs. We said goodbye to his friends, and we made the long drive home. I was emotionally and mentally exhausted at this point, and the adrenaline was gone. So needless to say, my chronic illness took flight, and I went into a definite flare for a few months with a lot of pain. All the stress, all the anxiety, everything was gone. And well, it was still there, but it was just that adrenaline rush was gone. So it was all very, very front of mind. The first challenging time I ran into was June for Father's Day. And I really didn't expect it to hit as hard as it did. I was busy helping the girls get ready to, helping them pick out gifts for their dad. And thanks very much to Facebook and social media and everybody who sends you reminders. So suddenly I'm getting all these Papa reminders and stuff to get the kids for their grandparents and stuff as well, or what to get your dad. And of course, helping because, Dan was going to go see his kids and spend time to celebrate Father's Day for himself. And all I wanted was to hear his voice. But I did get my wish granted because there was a voice recording from him from the answering machine, so I did get to listen to his voice. With COVID restrictions lifting, I got to take the girls to Quebec so that we could go meet Papa's family. And that was great because we didn't get to spend that time together. We didn't get to share in our grief and go through that as a family. So I remember when we arrived at my uncle's, I was really excited to see them. I hadn't seen them in a very long time, but I was also really anxious to see them. And it took all my strength not to cry when I saw my uncle because he not only looked, he sounded so much like my dad. And we hugged, and I think we both hugged each other a little bit longer than usual. And I remember talking to my aunt about it a little after, saying, it took all my strength not to start crying when I saw him because he just reminded me of my dad. And she said, your uncle and I said the same thing that night because the minute we saw you, not that it would be now because I had dark hair, which was very much like my dad. But they said they had the same experience because when they saw me, it was like seeing my dad again. And so my uncle was great. He took us around to all the old parts. My dad was from Trois-Rivières in Cap-la-Madeleine. And so he took us around to like the old houses and the schools and stuff. And so it was like, even the girls and I were saying like the housing looked like old 40s and 50s movies kind of thing, right, that you'd see. And so it was really exciting to do that. And we did our usual family tradition of playing cribbage. So my grandfather used to play cards and cribbage with us. My dad played it with us. So my uncle and I, of course, had to sit there and play cribbage. And while we were there in the afternoon listening to music, we both kind of looked up at the same time as we hear James Last playing on the radio. And we both laughed. My dad loved James Last and that particular song as well. I think I'd actually ended up using that song for his celebration of life. And my dad had even learned how to play the accordion. So we both kind of smiled and laughed and said, your dad's just really happy. My uncle looked at me and goes, your dad's just really happy you brought the kids to meet everybody. So it was nice, and it was a nice remembrance. And that's why I have my cardinal, because the girls always tell me every time they see a cardinal. I remember the first trip Dan and I went on after my dad passed away, there was this one butterfly. And I swear, every time, no matter where we went, one time it was on the beach, the dog went chasing after this butterfly, and when I caught her, it was this one butterfly. And then I came out of the cottage in the morning, and there was this one butterfly. It looked the exact same. And then one time we even went to like this waterfall area, and I opened the car door, and this butterfly had gotten stuck in the car, and it looked exactly the same. So they're always with us somewhere. They're always letting us know that they're thinking of us and they're with us. With COVID restrictions lifting, we were able to do a celebration of life, and we had that scheduled for October. So we were really busy planning and preparing for that, putting together a montage again with pictures and clips, and making sure friends and family were included and everybody could come, making arrangements because, finally, as a family, we'd be all together. And I realized as we're driving there, we don't have anything, like, I didn't ask anybody if they want to talk, if they want to say anything. I said, I better quickly write something down. And so I started writing and sharing memories with the girls and talking. So I, wrote it, thank you so much for coming. And we're all so grateful for you for being here. And then sharing some of my stories about my dad, and we were remembering some really good ones. And so we all got there. And I remember the first time I saw my sister from Nova Scotia, it was like going through it again. Hug and cry for a very long time because we hadn't been able to console each other, and seeing my nieces and nephews that I hadn't seen. And we went and we set up, and we got everything all set up for the food and the flowers and the urn and everything so people could say, and I had the prayer cards and stuff. And everybody got there, and we kept saying hi and greeting people we hadn't seen in ages, and family members that we hadn't seen in a long time. And so it was time to start. So I went up to the front, and because not everybody could come. We had family who obviously couldn't travel from Nova Scotia or Quebec for different reasons. So we did stream it on Facebook Live. And so I stood up and started to talk. And I think I said, I want to welcome everybody and thank you so much for coming here. My mom, my sisters, and, rhyming off all the people. And we all want to, and I couldn't talk. All I could do was cry. Because all of a sudden, I was saying it all out loud. I hadn't told a room full of people. I hadn't spoken about it in public. And I just froze and I couldn't talk. And I was trying so hard to find my voice. I knew it was there. And Dan quickly stood up and came and put his arm around me. My middle daughter stood up, took my papers from me, and started reading like a pro. And she just took over from where I was, and then finished the welcome and the intro. And then she kind of looked at me. She goes, do you want to share your stories? And I was like, yes. So she gave me the chance I needed to kind of settle. So an amazing support team, and they both did wonderful. And I was very grateful for that. I shared the stories. I shared the time that my dad taught me a very valuable lesson about what it means when a cow lifts their tail. You don't want to be standing behind them when that happens. And then we played the video, and after that it was done. And we went around the room, we talked to people, we had food, we laughed, people shared their jokes, we did family photos, and it was a good day. We spent the rest of the weekend together as a family, remembering, celebrating his life, and just being together to support each other at that time. I figured, okay, the worst is over, right? We're done. I can move on now. No. Christmas was next. That was the hard one. And I knew Christmas Day would be a little difficult. But I was like, what else could be difficult? Well, decorating the tree hit really hard. We had a very big tradition with my dad, and it was listening to Bing Crosby on the radio. So his White Christmas album was always played. And so I had a mix of Christmas music. So with my kids, obviously there were songs that we had created with them that they liked. And so their song started first. And while we're in the midst of putting up the tree, all of a sudden Bing Crosby, White Christmas came on. And I just sat down and I looked at the girls and I said, well, you know what, girls, you're old enough. You can decorate the tree this time. They looked at me in shock. Anybody who knows me, I am a bit of a control freak with my Christmas tree. It has to be done a very certain way. And I sat down and I let them decorate the tree. They went nuts. But my middle daughter, the one who stood up for me, was like, no, it has to be done this way. This was look good. And she was very much. So she had mom's mom's mind and, thoughts in mind when she was doing it. And that was it. And so now they are more involved in putting up my Christmas tree than before. I share that a little bit more. The other thing that didn't happen that year is I did not watch some of my movies. So some of the movies I always watch with my dad, like White Christmas, they just didn't get played that year. I do watch them now. We didn't watch them that year. As the new year arrived, I thought, okay, now it's got to be the worst, right? Like I'm done. Nope. Then it was my birthday without him. My first birthday with my dad not calling, with my dad not talking to me. And then his first birthday and the anniversary of his passing. Unfortunately, due to things, I could not join my sisters. They all went together to be at one of my sister's houses, and she'd now moved from Ontario to Manitoba. So Mom and the girls were all out there, but I could not join them for that day. So I was home, and it was hard. And I remember, because my daughter's birthday is 2 days after my dad's. So, of course, after his birthday had passed, I was very busy planning hers. And then her birthday was done. I couldn't figure out why I was so irritable. I had no patience. Work was getting on my nerves. Everything was getting on my nerves. And then I realized what it was. It was May 10th. So that first year was hard. It was very hard. It was emotional for me. And I did work part of the day, but I ended up taking half a sick day just because I couldn't concentrate. I missed him. I missed him a lot. And I wish I could say that I never have those moments. As you can see from this, I do. I still have those moments where it's hard to relive or hard to look back. And while we near the 5th anniversary of his passing, I do from time to time struggle. But we find ways to deal with that. And that's kind of where I want to share. Knowing you're never going to see him again, knowing that he's never going to see what your kids do, like he's never going to see my kids graduate. I've had 2 kids graduate high school. He's never going to see my kids get married or have their own kids. He's not going to see me happy. He's not going to be there to walk me down the aisle. He's not going to see Dan and I and what we make of our life. But I do find ways to incorporate him. So how do I do that? Well, let's start with the wedding. He's still walking me down the aisle. How, you say? Well, I found some really neat ways that you can create a brooch that has pictures and whatnot, and I will figure out a way to include my stone, and my dad will be with me walking me down the aisle. For Christmas, we have a little tree that we put up that is called Papa's Tree. And that tree has the stone under it. It has little things that the girls have made for him. So my one daughter started doing wood carving. So there's little things that we keep under the tree for him. We put ornaments. So people have given me lots of ornaments with cardinals. There are some ornaments that I got from my sister in Nova Scotia for my first Christmas on my own. So those are now, because, he was there when I got them. So those are on the tree. And we put little things. So I have a very talented niece who makes all kinds of amazing ornaments. And so when they send me those, they're all up on my tree as well, because that's the family tree. That's Papa's tree. When it's not Christmas, we have a little section that has not only Papa, but we have some pictures of relatives that we've lost, so my grandparents and stuff. And we keep a little area that's just for him, and that's where the stone is, so everybody knows if they want to see him, they can go see him. We have the prayer card there as well. And, we try and reflect and think about him on his birthday. I still do social media posts and think about him. So Father's Day, I do Happy Father's Day in heaven, or Happy Heavenly Father's Day. I can't remember how the best way to say that is. And as we are nearing the 5th anniversary, I've been having more and more talks with the girls that I'd like to come up with, because they're getting older and they're going to move away. But I'd still like us to come together and figure out a way to just do something that commemorates him, because that's the piece we're missing. We haven't figured out what we do to remember him on that day. Whether it's going to be we just go down to the beach, because my dad loved the water and loved boating, so maybe we go down to the beach. Maybe we just go for a walk, but we'll figure out something. And I think that's the important thing to do. Find ways to remember them, find ways to honor them, and find ways that you incorporate them still in everything you do, whether it be a piece of jewelry, whether it be a remembrance, whether it be a gift they gave you. Don't hide them away if you can. You may have to for the first little bit while you adjust, but, put them out there, keep talking about them, and keep remembering. Losing a loved one is not easy, and it is a different experience for everyone. And depending on who you're losing, it's a completely different experience as well. make sure to talk to your doctor, talk to a therapist. I know, broken record. Therapy helps. They can help talk you through that. Everybody is going to experience sadness. Everybody could potentially experience a little bit of depression when you lose a loved one. So be sure to talk about it, talk to family, and make sure that you get the help that you need. Continue to share those memories, to continue to remember and laugh about them and think back. And there are things that we'll be doing. It's like, oh my gosh, do you remember the time when Papa did this? And I remember we were watching some old family videos and my daughter started laughing because we could hear a little bird. And it was my dad standing on the top of the stairs while my, then 2-year-old daughter was playing downstairs, and he was doing a little bird call. So she'd look up at him and we're like, yep, that was Papa. Everyone deals with loss in their own way, and everyone does what they need to cope. Don't judge. Be patient. It's not hurting you. Whatever they're doing is not hurting you. If they want to share pictures, if they want to share their story, recognize that everybody has to heal in their own way. Don't expect even your own family to grieve in your timelines or the way you do. Everybody is going to go through it in their own, and everyone is going to experience it differently. All you can do is worry about yourself. That's the only thing that you can control. And you have to be present for those and let them show you what they need. So, if you have a friend who always, you always just meet up and go for coffee, just show up and say, hey, let's go for a coffee. Or bring them a coffee and say, hey, I thought we could just sit on the porch and have a coffee. Or, call them up saying, hey, I'm driving by your place. You want to go for a walk? Do you need to pick up anything? Just be there. And sometimes it might be, just sitting there and not saying anything. They just want somebody to be in the room with them. Just be mindful of what they need and what they're asking for. And if they ask for space, respect that, because then they might just need to cope on their own first. Preparing for today's podcast was hard. I'm proud to say I did a lot less crying in the podcast than I did in writing it. I think I took 3, maybe 4 days to write it because I kept having to stop to put things down as I recollected everything. I even had to call Mom to make sure, because there are so many things when you're in heightened emotions you don't remember. But as hard as it was, it again allowed me to remember, and it allowed me to reflect and remind myself of all the things he did for me and how much he meant for me. It'll always be hard, but he's my dad, and that's all there is to it. But reflection is therapeutic, and it's helpful, and it's healing. So, it's like you get to write a letter that you just don't send. And, like I said, having the stone is great. I can sit there and talk to him and tell him what I'm thinking. So I hope you found something. I'm hoping that if it did bring up any emotions, that you will talk to family and friends. That if anything, you're going to go pull out that photo album and look back at some old memories, or maybe pull out the camera at some old videos. And maybe you have other ideas. Maybe you have ways or suggestions on what I can do as a memorial to commemorate my dad. Feel free to add the comments and let me know and share what you thought. And until next time, be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And take care, stay safe, be kind, and we will see you soon.